Bird Box. God, this was a weird movie. So I know I'm late to the game on this one, but I was scrolling through Netflix the other day and I finally decided to watch Bird Box. This movie had a lot of hype when it came out back in 2018, so does it live up to the hype? Well, yes and no. So Bird Box is an apocalyptic thriller about the world suddenly going into chaos when a mysterious entity appears causing people to kill themselves if they see it. So there's been a lot of films like this before. I immediately got World War Z vibes right from the get-go, but I think that Bird Box is pretty unique, at least compared to anything that I've ever seen before, so I'll give it props for that. I have heard people say that it's very similar to films like A Quiet Place and The Happening, but I've personally never seen those films, so I'm not really qualified to lay criticism against Bird Box for it in that regard. So the film takes place in two different time periods. In the present day, Sarah Bullock's character, Mallory, is the sole caretaker of two children as they try to make it to a safe haven where they will be safe from the monster. The past takes place 5 years earlier, right when the outbreak happens. Mallory barely manages to escape death and takes refuge in a house with multiple other companions. Between the two storylines, I think that I found the past a little more interesting, but the present had a lot more potential. I think that the past was interesting because it was cool seeing the world fall apart in the way that it did. The past also gets a lot more screen time and has a lot more characters interacting with each other. Overall, I just felt like it had a lot more going for it than the present. The reason I say the present had a lot more potential, though, is because I think that if given more time and executed a little better, the present timeline could have been a lot more gripping than it ended up being. It would have been really cool to see some real screen time devoted to a guardian looking after two children as they try to navigate a world where they can't see, with a monster in it that's constantly trying to kill them. I also think that it would have been very beneficial to the story if they took more time to develop the two kids. But in the end, most of the present timeline is just them floating down the river. I think that the main divide and point of discussion that people are having about this film is the film quite literally gives no answers. On one end of the aisle, some people say that it's good that the film doesn't give any answers because it leaves all the horrifying elements up to our own imagination. The characters in the film don't really know what's going on, what the monster is, and why people are killing themselves when they see it, and the audience doesn't know either, so we're able to connect with them in that sense. On the other side of the aisle, some people feel that the story is too open-ended. By not answering anything, the film loses some depth that could have added to the story. To these people, it feels like the filmmakers not answering anything shows that they had a concept but didn't really know how to end it. Out of both these arguments, I find myself somewhat in the middle. I do see why the filmmakers didn't answer some of the questions that the audience may have had because it does give a mystery to it all. Although I do think the film could have maybe benefited by answering a couple questions, such as, how did the monster just all of a sudden appear and why aren't the insane affected by it? These questions are never answered in the film, but I think really could have given some weight so it didn't just feel like the whole thing just was a random occurrence. In terms of the characters, I think that the film is really carried by its lead actors. Sarah Bullock gives an excellent performance as Mallory and really carries the film on her back. The whole film really relies heavily on her character and the character arc that Mallory goes through. Trevante Rhodes also gives a very good performance as Tom, Mallory's love interest and sort of leader of the group. I like his character a lot because he's one of the only people in the house that actually has a purpose for being in the story. I didn't like, though, how he was a little too trusting, though. Like, dude, why are you trying to let all these people through your door? I also like John Malkovich's character quite a bit. He didn't exactly have a whole lot to do until his eventual sacrifice, but I like the fact that he just despised everybody in the house, and it was very funny to watch. As for the rest of the characters, though, they're all pretty bad. Like, I understand why this guy's in the story. He serves his purpose, and that's about it. Same with this guy. But Olympia sucks, and her only reason for being in the story is to give birth. Charlie isn't that good either. I like the actor, but I don't know why they felt the need to put in a comic relief character, because the story doesn't benefit from it at all, and honestly messes up the tone a lot when he's on screen. The old lady quite literally has no reason for being in this film at all. There's Cop Girl, who does literally nothing. Oh, and Machine Gun Kelly's in this movie. Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. He kind of just says his lines, fucks Cop Girl, and then dips. Alright, see ya, bud. I think the biggest disappointment character-wise, though, has to be the two kids. Yeah, I understand they're not going to be that good at acting. They're 5 years old. But I just found myself while watching the film just not caring about them, because the film doesn't give me a reason to care about them. Like, we see them get born, and then we see them 5 years later on a boat for most of the present-day timeline. How is this supposed to get me to care about them? This is why I stated earlier I think that more of the runtime should have been given to the present-day storyline. Overall, I really enjoyed watching Bird Box and was very entertained by it, but it definitely has some major issues. This film was massive when it came out in 2018, But because of some of those major issues combined with the fact that it's left so open-ended, I don't think that Bird Box will have the lasting impact that perhaps the filmmakers were hoping for. Anyways, that's all I got for today, guys. I'll see you next time.